Hello, Parsons Collab Design for Literacy Students. This is our weekly briefing on our Part 6 Baby Board Book project, and this is our final round for this project. We had our reviews last night with Demi as our guest reviewer and had a really good set of discussions, and I was really excited to see everyone's book pretty much finished and grateful for the feedback that we got from Demi. I think she came in with a good fresh perspective, was able to kind of take in everyone's ideas and look at the spreads and then just give some pretty on point, mostly praise, fortunately, and then some suggestions. So if you were given some suggestions from her or even from me, this is now the time to consider those things. The first step is to consider whether they're worth following up on. It doesn't mean that everything that was said has to be literally done, but I think they should for sure be considered. And if you think there's possibility that it's a good idea, this would be the time now to try a few alternate ideas. If they work, or if they maybe work, then share them with me and loop me in so that we can decide whether it's worth making the change. And even on your own, though, also take a look at your full book one more time and look at the spreads, look at the text, read it out loud, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Be a good time to get your parents involved, maybe, and make sure that you're kind of like really giving it one more critical round of consideration, and that you're looking at all the details involved and that you're making sure that everything is perfect. So as I said, this is our last of 6 phases. And in this phase, we're going to do what we just talked about, apply the revisions or edits that came up. I'm also interested in maybe looking at some of the text on some of the longer pieces, if you want to share that with me, so we can just get another set of eyes on it and see if there's any edits needed. And then once we get the text and the layouts worked out, it'll be time to do a few production things like creating the bleeds for each spread and packaging the files so that they can be delivered to me in a way that they're mostly ready to go to the printer. We'll look at it internally at my office and make sure everything's right, and then they'll be sent to the printers. But there's going to be 15 of these books, and it'll be important that you kind of follow these steps, that you put in the bleeds, that you make sure that your fonts and your links, all your illustrations and different files that are needed to make your book are all included and they're not missing. And we don't end up having to kind of track each of you down because there's things that are not included in the files that you provided. So part of what I want to be you guys focusing on is this idea of being professional and buttoned up at this final stage, particularly as we are now approaching a print vendor, a manufacturing company that's going to make these books. And that as creative people, we have to really demonstrate that we understand how this works and that we're not just bringing creative ideas that aren't linked to reality. So let's make sure we're as buttoned up as possible so that we can have a good printing experience and no one gets something back that doesn't look right. So in the final process of getting this ready, make sure you're using the design template, the InDesign template that I provided. And it looks like, from what I could tell looking yesterday, that most everyone, maybe 1 or 2 people, may not be doing this. So make sure you're using this template. It's available as a link in the Canvas assignment. And things like the DERT logos and the text that are on the back need to be in place, shouldn't be moved. And the colors can change if needed, if it needs to be white, or if it needs to be a color, that's possible too. But it looks like everyone's pretty much been addressing this and keeping true to having that logo in place. But please keep it in the same exact place. Don't move it. Don't make it bigger or smaller. This is a set of books that I want to make sure that it's all consistent throughout every single book. So the main thing you're going to be focusing on with getting these books prepared for the printer is to make sure that we're providing a bleed and that we have extended our live area of our book out further than what it'll actually be, so that when the books go through binding and trimming, that as they cut off the book to the actual size, there isn't a need to exactly hit where the edge of the book is, and that there's tolerance for the color or the pattern or the image that's behind, that covers your cover, back, or spreads, if there is such a case, that they don't have to worry about suddenly having a white line showing because they missed the trim a little bit. Now, there may be one or two of you who have white books, and if that's the case, then you don't have to worry about any of this. If your book is white, then it's okay. But if you have any kind of color or pattern or image, you need to make sure. And what we're doing is, when you look in the spread, you see the white, the full white spread, and the edge of that is literally the shape of the book. And that's that where the white stops and turns gray is the actual edge of the book. On the inside here, you'll see a pink magenta rule that's very close to the edge. And that's just sort of kind of a sort of buffer zone that says, don't put things important, or even don't make a rule that's just that thick around the book. Make sure that you go beyond that. So it's kind of like a live area, warning area. But on the very outside edge, you see this red line that goes around the size of the book. And that's the bleed area. And then that's where we need to extend all our picture boxes to go to the outer edge. So here you see an example of one of the books that were done in the past. And you can see that this box is open beyond the black line that's on the inside here, having this 3/16 inch border go all the way around. Now, on the inside of the book, you have a cover, a spine, and a back. And even though they seem to be three pieces, don't think that they have to be. They literally are one sheet of paper, and that you don't have to have your image separated. If your design is about going all the way across, it can simply be one big picture box on the back that you open. You don't have to like stop here, make another box and open one in the back. It could be one full thing if you have a image that goes all the way across. So keep that in mind. And as you can see in this example, when you close the bleed area, as we do here on the bottom and the left side, there's quite a bit of space that isn't going to really be part of your book, but needs to still be there. So make sure you're extending your illustrations, or you're having your pattern go beyond, or your color. If you have just color, that's the easiest. If you have an illustration that has a pattern, that may be tricky. So if you come up with any potential issues, please reach out to me and we can work it out. And then after you've done all that, make sure you spell check, make sure you read through it, make sure you look through everything. Make sure all your links, all the images all the links that you place in like Illustrator files or Photoshop files, they're all connected so that you can then go through this packaging process in InDesign. And as you can see here on this page, if you go to the File tab at the top left here, and you go down this banner and you connect or click on the word package, and that will automatically create a new InDesign file, a folder that'll go inside. It'll create an MDL version of that file. It'll make a folder and put all your links in there. It'll make a folder and put your fonts in there. And this is what I want everyone to send me, so that we're not having to search around for missing images or missing fonts or missing graphics that you use in your book. So use that packaging feature. Make sure that all your images are there, your fonts are there. Now, you may have trouble with this font that we provided you, the Accidents Grotesque. Don't worry about that if you don't have it. Just hit OK. We have it in the office and you don't have to have it. And I know some of you already told me that you've had that issue, so don't worry about that. Just worry about the fonts that you bring, the new fonts that you bring in. And if they're Adobe fonts, obviously, then we just have to activate it through Adobe. So it's not going to be in a folder. So I put all this on the Canvas page for our assignment. In that page, there's another version, a fresh version of the template, the InDesign template, in case you want to download it again and you need to redo it or you haven't done it yet. I have a little packaging tutorial PDF to help you if you need. And then there's a link to the Google Drive where when you're done, please upload it by a week from yesterday, a week from on Thursday. by class time, upload your final files to this folder. And then after that, for next week in our class, we're going to transition into our next project, which is our storybook project. And on the page here are just some examples of some past storybooks. And just to give you a quick, brief overview, which we'll talk more about in detail in class, we're going to be taking on this idea of creating these 8x10 kind of bigger size, 16 to 36, 32 page kind of in that range books that are color and they're paperback, and they're meant to be a different experience for an older child than our baby board books. These are meant for older toddlers and tweens, and kids from like 4 to 11, depending on how you decide who your book is for. But the bigger idea with our books is that we really want to create a set of storybooks that are unique in their in how they position or how they hold true to the idea of classic stories, and how they take those classic stories and make them relevant for today, or how they unearth stories from other cultures, stories that are meant to be to help navigate through life, navigate through the problems, see how characters come across certain dilemmas or situations or problems or obstacles, and how they overcome them, and utilizing the reading experience not just as something to learn in terms of academically, but also in terms of learning how to be a better person and learning how to work your way through a modern world and get along with people and be your best self. So we kind of have some different categories. We started off by taking stories like the ant and the grasshopper that are just these kind of classic stories. This is an Aesop fable, or the Three Billy Goats Gruff, just kind of like these stories that have been around for centuries, and redesign them in a way that makes them accessible and fun, maybe adjust the text depending on your approach to make it, make it seem more understandable, but to kind of stay true to the story. Same with this Goldilocks, like take a story like Goldilocks and the Three Bears and stick to what the story is and design it in a beautiful way, but maybe change the approach of what the characters look like, so that they're more inclusive to people who might want to read this book and feel like they could be part of this world. Or kind of bring a more modern twist to it, like we do here with Three Pigs, and bringing the sort of digital aspect to it where the three pigs are texting each other, or Red Riding Hood, or just like, and where we kind of take the word and take the title and make it shorter and make it more about how Red takes up the problem of the wolf and uses her skill sets, is brave and solves the problem and saves her grandma. Or to take books that are timeless and maybe less classic because you've never heard of them, like the Runaway Pancake, and unearth some stories that are from the past and be able to bring them to the present. And more importantly, or more interestingly, like to begin to look at books from other cultures. This First Fire is a Cherokee legend, and something that's not known by a lot of people, or not very many at all, and bring them to life. And here's where I want to encourage each of you to start this week thinking about some of the stories from your past, and some of the stories that you may have experienced as a kid, that maybe have been told to you growing up, or that may be part of your family. Or if you don't have that, maybe start to research that and look into what stories are folklore or fairy tales within your own heritage and within the culture you come from. Maybe engage with your parents about them, ask them about what stories they were told, and see if we can bring some stories that connect directly to your personal backgrounds and bring them to be part of this collection. And I think that's sort of like the most interesting to me. And maybe the last version of what we can do is to create original stories, but creating original stories kind of from the prompt of starting with maybe a folklore or fairy tale that's well known, and turning it into something that's a whole new story. And maybe this is Ducky Ugly is a book that kind of represents that here, the Cielo book, where the ugly duckling was the original story, and got rid of the ducks and turned it into a story about a boy who didn't fit in, and was considered ugly and didn't feel right, and brought it more into the experience of a contemporary kid and how they transform into somebody new with the help of a friend. But they kind of keep the duck part in there by calling him Ducky, and having like the Mallards were the family he stayed with as an orphan. And, so there's kind of like, there's cues towards the original story. So that's another option if writing is part of your skill set and you want to kind of take it further. So that's basically the quick overview of what we're doing next week. I'll bring some of these books with you, and I might share some links of the books online if I have time, to give you more of a chance to check things out. We can talk more about this project next week. So let's take on our baby board books, get those finished. Reach out to me if you need feedback on any last minute revisions, and we'll see you next week.